take out these amalgams because the country cannot afford, they've got socialized medicine, they cannot afford to handle all these Alzheimer's people because they're going into Alzheimer's at 50 and 60 years old, where they may have to be taken care of for another 20, 30 years, and the country can't afford it.
My mother had a lot of mercury amalgam fillings and died of Alzheimer's, and it was terrible. Terrible what happened to her. And nobody knew then. Yeah. Nobody knew.
Well, there's so many of these diseases. We're talking about more than 50 autoimmune diseases. In fact, I've got one of our people here who knows how to operate a computer is looking at all the diseases that have started since 1940. Hey, how long has man been on the planet? The last 50, 60 years is kind of a small percentage as to how long we've been on the planet. And we're having a lot of new diseases, and my prediction is we're going to see more of them every year because people's immune systems are dropping, and mainly due to dental materials and the diet we shouldn't be on. And it's kind of like if the ocean dropped 20 feet in level, what do you think would happen? We'd have a whole lot of islands that weren't there before. And that's what's happening with our immune system. It's able to handle things today, but if immune competence, ability, drops by 10 or 20%, we're going to have a whole lot of new diseases. Try to find somebody who's got AIDS who does not have amalgam in their mouth or never has. I think Rock Hudson was one of the first to bring up the AIDS thing, and his sexual partner did not have AIDS. Well, my guess is he didn't have any amalgam.
That's interesting.
But we do see that taking the amalgams out does change the lymphocytes. I mean, my work in immunology was primarily with white blood cells. And, hey, these babies can respond in a matter of days if you give them the right diet and get the mercury out of there. Then the immune system can come back to capacity and, maybe you cure it, maybe you just improve it. But at any rate, either one is going to be worthwhile. But there are a lot more autoimmune diseases that are occurring that do not have to occur and can be improved if you go through all this stuff that we go through, or we used to until my practice was destroyed. In fact, it's kind of interesting. We had something called the bubble operatory, which was a very special operatory. Somebody said that it looked like a great big pumpkin. Well, I was kind of insulted, and then I looked, and it's shaped like a pumpkin. On the top, its own air conditioning and heating and everything, which was kind of green. It did look like a pumpkin. And it was all in a Faraday cage, which neutralizes any electrical energy like radio and television and cell phones and all that. And inside of that, boy, did we see some miracles happen. But the state attorney general made me destroy it because it, ready for this, implied that mercury was poisonous. So we had it. But, if you can use all these things, you can cause a whole lot of health to occur. If you want to drop let's look at Sweden. Sweden was the first country that I worked with that got rid of amalgam. The first year, just measuring the number of days of missed work this is kind of hard to say. They measured the number of sick days before and after they stopped placing amalgam, and they found that within 1 year of stopping placing amalgam, that little country saved $1 billion by people not calling in sick. And that's all they did. They didn't take the amalgams out. They didn't balance chemistry. They didn't do any of these things that we used to do. And they still... Now, if that little country can save $1 billion, how much could we save in a year as far as our health care system is concerned? I mean, we'd be into the trillions that Obama's talking about just by practically doing nothing. And then if you want to try helping some of these people, we could save a few more trillions.
Do I dare ask you at the end of this show what your perspective on fluoride is relative to the mouth and the teeth?
No. That was the shortest answer I've come up with, isn't it? No, dentists are so emotionally joined at the hip with fluoride that it is it's a losing situation to try to discuss it.
Get it. It's
Fluoride
clear.
is an enzyme inhibitor. It kills anything it touches. In fact, fluoride in water, this is kind of interesting, was discovered in Colorado Springs by Dr. Frederick McKay, whose family were patients of mine. And when he first came out with this, showing how much fluoride, we had 16 parts per million at that time. That's how much we had when I was a kid. The federal government said, we are not going to announce that there is fluoride in the water in Colorado Springs because this would ruin the tour industry. And at that time, we're talking 1920s, 30s, 40s. At that time, tourism was the biggest industry in Colorado Springs. So they didn't announce there was fluoride in the water because people would be afraid of it and not come here for their vacations.
So is your water still fluoridated?
Well, that was natural fluoride, which is not what they're using today. What they're using today is, do you know what a scrubber is, where they have coal plants and they're burning coal to make electricity, and they have scrubbers in the chimney to clean up the air before it gets put out to the public? What they're doing is cleaning out the scrubbers and selling that as a fluoride product. Now, the Dental Association in Colorado Springs a few years ago talked the city into spending $1.2 million on a fluoridation system, which we didn't need, but they were going to put it in anyway. So the city bought it and then put it up to vote. And there was talk about the influence of one person. There was one woman who found out what they were using, and it had a lot of lead in it. So she did not mention the word fluoride, because that's way, way, way too emotional. So she pointed out that the amount of lead that they would be putting in the water would interfere with the development of their children's brains, and this is something that's inappropriate. And it got voted down. So they've got the equipment sitting here, and dentistry is very upset about it, but they're not using it because they're bringing in water from other areas now, so we don't have as much fluoride as we used to. But it seems that the fluoride that was in the water when I was a kid was not that damaging. But what they're putting in is damaging, especially when there is lead and all these other things that are included in it. And there's a new form of fluoride that I've just heard of recently that they're putting in that is more toxic than what they were using. But it was interesting also that when this battle was going on, they asked the head of the Dental Association, well, isn't fluoride a poison? He said, well, that's only if you get up to 4.7 parts per million, and we're aiming for 3 parts per million, which is safe, unless you take 2 drinks of water instead of 1, was my thought on that. And then this gets to be a little bit more interesting.
Here's the issue with that. Nobody knows how many glasses of water a person, whether it's a young child or a teen or an adult, is going to drink a day.
And if you're working outside or if you're working inside, might that make a difference? But the important thing is, if 4.7 is dangerous, how much is in toothpaste?
That's a great question.
Intelligent gal, give me a guess. This is just play a game with me. If 4.7 parts per million would be dangerous or anything above that, how much would they put in the toothpaste?
I have no clue.
1,500 parts per million.
How do you know that?
Look into the chemistry of it. That's how much is in there. Look at the percentage of fluoride that's in the toothpaste. All of them aim for 1,500, but that may not be true today, because a few years ago they were going to adopt the European standard, which is 2,500 parts per million fluoride.
You've got to be kidding.
I got this information at a meeting in Paris in which they were discussing controlling dental decay worldwide. There were, 50 different nations represented. I was one of the speakers there. And they were talking about, and that's the first time that I knew there was 1,500 parts per million of fluoride in the water. And this was presented at an international dental conference. but they did say that they were going to reduce the dental decay in the states even more by raising that to 2,000